All right, everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. This is number 5. Can you believe it? And we've got a wild one for you today. Seriously, it started with this weird little news story, and it just kept getting bigger and weirder. And I'm telling you, we're talking full-on conspiracy theory levels of strange here.
Conspiracy theory? Well, hold on. Let's back up a bit. What kind of news story are we talking about?
Okay, so it all starts in Mississippi, peak pandemic, right? Everyone's freaking out, social distancing, the whole 9 yards. And the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency, MEMA and the Department of Health, they sent out this email with a hotline number.
Okay, a shot line. Makes sense. People probably had a lot of questions.
Exactly. The idea was you call this number if you see someone, breaking the rules, not social distancing, that kind of thing. But there was a little problem.
Oh, I'm sensing this is where things take a turn. What happened?
So people start calling this hotline right, expecting to get some official, government person. But instead, they get hit with this. Welcome to America's Hottest Talkline. An exciting guy's free. Press 2 to connect free now.
Whoa, wait. They accidentally set up a phone sex hotline as their COVID reporting number. That's quite the mix-up.
You would think, right. So naturally, everyone's like, what in the world is going on? And the official explanation, a typo. Someone just hit the wrong key when they were typing in the number.
A typo? Come on, that's a pretty big typo to make. And it landing on a phrase like America's Hottest Talkline? I don't know. That seems a little too convenient.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's just too perfect, right? It's like, what are the odds? And this is where things go from weird to full-on bizarre. There's this reporter, Eliza, she starts digging into this, and she finds out this isn't just some isolated incident.
Wait, so there are more cases of random numbers connecting to this America's Hottest Talkline?
Oh, yeah. Way more. We're talking a whole pattern of these accidental connections popping up all over the country, like Hurricane Irma relief efforts, people trying to call for help, boom, phone sex hotline, main EBT card, same deal.
Okay, that's strange. But maybe those are just, I don't know, similar wrong numbers or something.
Hold on, it gets crazier. We're talking the New York Yankees, the Baltimore Police, Marvel Comics, even a domestic abuse hotline in Florida, all accidentally linked to America's Hottest Talkline at different points in time.
The New York Yankees, Marvel Comics. What kind of operation is running this hotline that they're connected to all these different organizations?
And here's the kicker. It's not the same number every time. Every single instance has a totally different phone number. It's like this phantom phone sex empire is everywhere, just lurking in the shadows, waiting to pounce on a misplaced digit.
Okay, now that's just creepy. It can't be just random chance at that point. It sounds like something's being orchestrated, but by who and why?
Exactly. And the Mississippi hotline? That was even weirder. The America's Hottest Talkline message would play for like 5 seconds, and then just click, hang up. No instructions, no sexy voices, just silence.
That's bizarre. You'd think they'd want to, keep people on the line if they're running a phone sex business. What's the point of hanging up like that?
Right. It makes no sense. And this reporter, Eliza, she tries calling the number back later. First, it's just dead air, like the number's disconnected. But then a few days later, it's active again. But this time, the message is totally different. Something like, thank you for calling. Are you or someone in your household 50 years or older? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no.
So it goes from a phone sex hotline to a senior citizen survey. What in the world is going on with this number? It's like some kind of phone number chameleon.
This thing's got layers, I'm telling you.
Okay.
So Eliza starts calling those other numbers that had been linked to America's Hottest Talkline, the hurricane relief one, the EBT card one, all of them. And guess what?
More phone sex.
Nope. This time it's recordings from Medical Alert Center, those I've fallen and I can't get up things. And another one called Autosave Center. Turns out it's Protect My Car, selling car warranties.
From steamy talkline to medical alerts to car warranties, that's a pretty wild range for a single phone number, don't you think?
It's like a phone number identity crisis. And here's the thing. Whenever Eliza managed to actually talk to a real person at any of these numbers, they would always try to sell her a medical alert system. Like hardcore sales pitch.
So are we thinking scam now? It's not just a weird coincidence. It's like someone's trying to make money off these wrong numbers.
That's what it's starting to look like. And finally, Eliza gets a tip from a guy who knows the toll-free number world, like the inner workings of it all. This guy, Bruno Tabby, he drops a name. PrimeTel.
PrimeTel. Never heard of it. Are they like a phone company or something?
That's just it. Nobody seems to know much about them. Bruno, he describes PrimeTel as this massive, shadowy company, like a behemoth, that controls something like 25% of all the 800 numbers out there.
25%. That's a huge chunk of the toll-free numbers. Are they like the Google of phone numbers or something?
More like the keys or Sues of phone numbers, according to Bruno. He says they're super secretive, like information about them just disappears. It's like trying to track a ghost.
Keys or Sues. That's pretty dramatic. But if they control that many numbers, they must be doing something, right?
And get this, Eliza starts talking to other people in the industry, and as soon as she mentions PrimeTel, they clam up, like they're scared to talk about them. She hears whispers about a woman who runs the whole thing, but nobody wants to go on record. It's like they're afraid of what PrimeTel might do.
Okay, so they're powerful and secretive. That's not a good combination. What else did Eliza find out about them?
Trying to find info on PrimeTel is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. No website, no social media, nothing. It's like they don't want to be found. But Eliza, she's good, and she uncovers this whole network of shell companies with these super generic names like National A1, Mayfair, Zipline, just bland, forgettable names, but it's all connected to PrimeTel.
So it's a whole web of companies designed to hide what they're really doing. This is getting more and more suspicious by the minute. Did Eliza ever actually get inside PrimeTel?
Not exactly, but she did track down a former employee, a woman named Evelyn, who worked for both National A1 and PrimeTel for years. And her story about how this whole thing started, oh man, you're not going to believe this.
Lay it on me. I'm ready for anything at this point.
So Evelyn, she says she got involved with this whole operation back in 1992, totally by chance. She answers a classified ad in a local paper looking for romantic fantasies.
Romantic fantasies? What, like writing stories or something?
That's what she thought at first. But when she calls, it turns out they want people to read these fantasies over the phone, like actual phone sex, but with stories instead of, live action.
Phone sex with stories. That's a new one. Where is this even happening? Some sleazy office building.
Nope, even better. The basement of a pawn shop. The National Watch Exchange in Philadelphia. Do you imagine?
Pawn shop basement?
Yeah.
Seriously, this whole thing is like something out of a movie.
And the owner of this pawn shop, Richard Cohen, he's the guy who eventually becomes the co-owner of PrimeTel. Evelyn describes him looking like George Thorogood, like rock and roll pawn shop owner, and completely obsessed with those old stiff teddy bears, like the really expensive ones.
George Thorogood with a teddy bear fetish running a phone sex operation out of a pawn shop basement. This is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. How did he even get into the phone business in the first place?
Believe it or not, the phone sex thing wasn't even his first idea. He started out by renting phone numbers for voicemail. Back then, not everyone could get their own phone line, so he would basically rent you a number where you could receive messages.
So he was like a voicemail landlord. Okay, that's actually pretty clever, if a little unusual.
But then he gets this idea to turn that voicemail technology into a personal system. Think of it like pre-internet dating, where people would call a number and leave voice messages for each other, hoping to connect.
So he was basically running an audio dating service out of a pawn shop. This guy is full of surprises.
Full of surprises. And a little bit creepy, too, if you ask me. But it was the 90s, so naturally the next step was 900 numbers. You know those paper-minute adult lines? They made a killing off that for a while.
Ah, the good old days of dial-a-porn. But those got shut down pretty hard, right?
Exactly. All those crackdowns on dial-a-porn in the late 90s really threw a wrench in the works. They needed a new plan. And that's where Sandra Kessler comes in.
Sandra Kessler. Is she the mysterious woman who's supposedly in charge of PrimeTel?
That's the one. Evelyn described her as a total genius, but also kind of eccentric. She collected robots and apparently talked a mile a minute. Quite the character.
So robots and a fast talker. What did she bring to the table?
Well, she figures out a way to exploit this new system the FCC had set up for toll-free numbers. They called them responsible organizations, or RESPORGs. Basically, these were organizations that would manage and distribute all the 800 numbers.
Okay, so instead of just getting a number from the phone company, you had to go through these RESPORGs.
Exactly. But here's the thing. The FCC thought maybe 30 or so RESPORGs would pop up, mostly big phone companies. But instead, over 300 of them appear out of nowhere. It was like a total gold rush.
So all these organizations suddenly had control over huge chunks of the toll-free number system. Sounds like a recipe for chaos.
And that's where Richard and Sandra saw their opportunity. They founded PrimeTel as a RESPORG. And their strategy was brilliant in a kind of shady way. They started buying up all the dirty spelling 800 numbers, the ones that spelled out words nobody wanted to be associated with.
Dirty numbers? What, like ones that spelled out, I don't know, offensive words or something?
Exactly. Because nobody wanted those numbers, they were super cheap to acquire. And PrimeTel, they figured out that they could use those numbers for all sorts of things.
So they cornered the market on the unwanted numbers and turned them into a gold mine. Pretty sneaky.
And then, of course, the internet comes along and phone sex starts to die out. But PrimeTel, they just adapt. They start using their massive stockpile of numbers for all sorts of other things. Medical alert systems, car warranties, you name it.
So they became like a phone number broker, buying them up and then renting them out to other businesses.
That's the theory. And it would explain all those weird recordings Eliza kept hearing. We're just using the same numbers for different clients. But here's the thing that still bugs me. Why keep the America's Hottest Talkline recording around at all? And why have it hang up after a few seconds?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. If they're not using it for phone sex anymore, why not just disconnect the number or change the message?
One theory I heard is that Reesborgs have to show some kind of activity on their numbers to keep control of them. So that recording could be a way to make it look like the number's in use, even if it's not actually connected to anything.
So it's like a digital heartbeat, a way to keep the number alive. That's kind of creepy, but it makes a weird kind of sense.
But we still had to know for sure, right? Is America's Hottest Talkline actually a phone sex line or what? So we did an experiment. We called a bunch of 800 numbers that spelled out SEX on the keypad, 739, just to see what would happen.
Bold move. And
we actually got through to America's Hottest Talkline. But this time, instead of the usual recording, it asked us to leave a message.
a voicemail for a phone sex line. That's a little less intimidating, I guess.
And the messages we heard, they weren't what you'd expect. These were regular women just looking for someone to talk to. One girl described herself as a U-Per from Michigan. Another was looking for a Brett Michaels lookalike.
So it's not a professional phone sex operation at all. It's more like a weird accidental dating service.
That's what it seems like. And then, get this, we actually got through to a live person, a woman named Jean from Tennessee. She's 77 years old, lives in a nursing home, and she's blind. She uses the hotline just to have someone to talk to because she's so isolated, especially during the pandemic.
Wow, that's actually really sad. This phone line with this ridiculous, misleading name is actually a lifeline for this woman.
I know, right? It's like this weird accidental social service.
Yeah.
A modern version of those voicemail dating services Richard Cohen was running back in the day.
So it's all connected, from romantic fantasies in a pawn shop basement to a source of comfort for a lonely woman in a nursing home. It's amazing how one little typo can lead you down such a strange and unexpected path.
And that's what I love about these deep dives. You know, you start with something simple, and it just keeps unfolding, revealing these hidden layers of weirdness and complexity. It's like peeling back the layers of reality one phone call at a time.
So after all this, what's the big takeaway? What have we learned about PrimeTel and America's Hottest Talkline?
Honestly, I don't know if we have any real answers. We've got more questions now than when we started. What is PrimeTel really doing with all those numbers? Why is America's Hottest Talkline still out there in this weird in-between state? And how many other accidental uses of technology are out there, connecting people in ways we never intended? Makes you wonder.
It does. It really does.
I guess that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. But trust me, we'll be keeping an eye on PrimeTel and America's Hottest Talkline. Who knows what other secrets we might uncover.
Until next time.
See you then.